Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes, but before we do, I'm going to go through some housekeeping items for you. My name is Alicia Lord. I'm with OJJDP's NTAC, and we are the technical hosts for today's event. Just want to note that today's event is being recorded and it will be published on OJJDP's Multimedia page as well as their YouTube channel. My colleague William has just opened a poll. It should have appeared in the bottom right-hand side of your corner. So please do take a moment to fill that out as we go through housekeeping. Past webinar events are also available on OJJDP's Multimedia and YouTube pages, including the webinar series that Shift just put on prior to this one. If you have any trouble downloading the event materials, please do look to the webinar chat. My colleague William has put in a Google Drive link so that you can download the materials there. If you do have any technical difficulties during the webinar, please send a private chat message directly to me, the host. All right, we will be taking questions from the participants during today's event. We will hopefully have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So please put questions in the chat box and make sure to select all panelists before hitting send. And please help us count. If you're viewing by yourself, you don't need to do anything at this time, but if you are viewing as a group, please go to the chat window now and type in the number of additional people joining you today. You will be receiving a certificate of attendance for today's event. This will be an automated email directly from WebEx. So if you don't get it right away, please do check your spam folder. All right, and here is an overview of today's agenda. I am now going to turn it over to actually Basilia, who is going to take us through introductions.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Alicia, for the introduction. For today's webinar, we're going to be discussing sleep and well-being. And just to give you a brief introduction, my name is Basilia Padilla, and I'm the program coordinator with the Innocent Justice Foundation. And just to give a brief overview as to our organization, we were founded back in 2007 to support ICAC teams and their affiliates. And if you're not familiar with the acronym, ICAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children. And a lot of these webinars were developed with that partnership in mind to kind of support a lot of the teams and a lot of the issues that they face. Through our partnership, we've learned a lot of the challenges they can face enduring secondary trauma and vicarious trauma. And we hope that through our partnership, we're able to help them mitigate a lot of these issues that they face. And we are funded by OJJDP, which allows us to bring these webinars to you free of charge. I do want to thank you for filling out the pre-registration questions. We did get quite a few questions, so we're hoping that we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. And I will be going off camera and on mute, but if you have any questions, feel free to, as Alicia mentioned, type those in the chat. I will be looking out for those. And again, at the end of the session, we'll have some time for a Q&A. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to our wonderful trainers. Take it away.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever time zone you're in. My name is Anthony Mays. I'm the Deputy Commander with the Albuquerque Police Department. Prior to coming back to the Albuquerque Police Department, as you can see there, I was the commander of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force for the Office of the New Mexico Attorney General. I have been working in developing curriculum and training with the Innocent Justice Foundation for, oh gosh, I've lost track of time, over at least 12 years. We're really excited to bring this segment to you today. It's actually my favorite, sleep. So we're excited we get a chance to talk about that, because getting enough sleep and taking care of yourself is definitely an important part of wellness. It's something that I have stressed with my law enforcement teams and my service providers and my support staff over the last 34 years, as wellness is important. And sleep is definitely a big part of that. So welcome. We're excited that you're here. Again, as I mentioned, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those. And if we can't we don't have an answer for you immediately, which most likely Carol always has an answer, so that's not really a concern, then we will get back with you. But welcome.
Hello, my name is Carol Brusca. I am the embedded mental health provider for the New Mexico Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force and the Human Trafficking Task Force. Anthony and I have worked together for a really long time. We started working together when we were both instructors at the University of Phoenix, and then went on to work together when he was in charge of the ICAC. And then we still get to work together now as trainers. My background is in marriage and family therapy, but I am a licensed trauma specialist, and as a consequence of that, I work with a great deal of people who've experienced trauma. So I'll work with domestic violence victims, sexual assault victims. I work with our ICAC, obviously, and then I see some other people that are in recovery. And one of the most important things that I see on the road to recovery of whatever the situation is making sure that you're getting the sleep that you need. This has been sleep has been a passion of mine for a long time because I've never been a good sleeper. And so consequently, I try to do what I can to make sure that I get sleep. So today is an opportunity for me to kind of do a deep dive with you into what you can do to understand sleep and to see if we can increase your sleep. So thankfully, we're here today and excited about it. The agenda, we're going to talk about how sleep impacts the brain and how the brain plays a role in sleep. We're going to talk about the stages of sleep, the consequences of sleep deprivation, and then the benefits of quality sleep and ways to increase sleep quality for ICAC teams, their affiliates, and anyone else who wants to increase the quality of their sleep.
Great, thank you, Carol. So some things to remember that the stigma, and when we talk about stigma, we think about, sometimes it's difficult to ask for help when we need help, or just reaching out to folks saying, things have been difficult for me here at work, or maybe in my personal life, and I need someone to talk to, I need some tools, and what should I do to better take care of myself? And that's especially difficult for law enforcement. Again, being in law enforcement for now 34 years, 20 years ago, I would have never asked anyone for help. I mean, I would have just tried to do it on my own because it's something that was ingrained when I went to the academy, and then through my years on patrol, and then working narcotics, and just working various units. It's like you're on your own, and the way you dealt with it is, you had choir practice after work, if anyone's familiar with that term. So you went out with the team, and you had drinks at the local bar or someone's place, and whatever you had to deal with that day at work was supposed to go away with that bottle, right? And it doesn't. And so we've been able to bring this program to folks all over the country, and again, dealing with sleep. That's part of it. So there isn't a stigma by asking for help and reaching out. I know you thought, well, I'd never thought I'd attend a webinar about sleep, but it is an important part of it, right? You know how important it is. Actually, the funny thing is I recently bought a new mattress because I'm just not getting the right amount of sleep. And now I just don't want to leave my bed because the mattress is so great. So again, thinking about that going forward, and as we discuss different areas, and we are going to talk about sleep, but we're going to talk about your mental wellness, of course. Think about what you can do. And again, it's okay to reach out. So the importance of sleep, definitely sleep is important, both physically and mentally, and we know that. I mean, just for us to function. And I personally, again, noticing that, which is one of the reasons I changed mattresses recently, for that reason alone, because I go, what's disrupting my sleep? Where's the disruptions? And we're going to talk about some of those today, but knowing what's being disruptive in your sleep, is it, the worrying about something that went on at work or maybe at home, what's going on? So occasionally sleep will get disrupted. We know that. I mean, especially if those of you that are on call still, or need to respond in the middle of the night, our sleep will get disrupted, but other things disrupted as well, right? Stress and things that are affecting our lives every day. So prolonged disruptions, we'll talk about the warning signs and what to look for. And then again, sleep is a natural way for our body and mind to recover. I was, in fact, yesterday, my mother, who's 80, has COVID, and but she's doing great, other than she's very tired. And my sister was really worried about her because she's sleeping all the time. And I go, her body's recovering. It's the best thing for her right now. And for us, it's the same thing. If we're not necessarily with an illness. I mean, if something's wearing you down, getting that extra sleep definitely does help with recovery.
So this is the kind of in-depth thing that we're going to spend a little bit of time in, but I just want you to have an understanding of the parts of the brain and how they impact our sleep and what the purpose of those individual parts are. So there's not going to be a test at the end, and this is just for foundational information. If you don't remember it, it's not a problem. But the hypothalamus, that's the peanut-sized structure inside. It's deep inside your brain, and it has nerve cells in it that act as control centers for affecting sleep and arousal. So what happens is it's going to help us know about when to sleep and when to wake up, and it's going to help in that process. The brain kind of does this reboot, and the hypothalamus is the thing that gets us going. The brain stem is at the base of the brain, obviously, and it communicates with the hypothalamus to control the transitions between wake and sleep. So the hypothalamus does the work, and the brain stem starts the communication going between to let us know whether we need to be awake or asleep. And then the thalamus acts as a relay for information to the cerebral cortex, so the long-term memory. So during most stages of sleep, this is just kind of low-key shut down, not working too hard. But during REM sleep, the thalamus is very, very active, and it's sending images, sounds, and sensations that fulfill our dreams. So if you're dreaming a lot, it means your thalamus is doing a lot of work to make that happen. The pineal gland, that's in between the two brain hemispheres, receives signals to increase production of hormone melatonin. So if you're not sleeping well, or if you need more melatonin to stay awake or stay asleep, then the pineal gland will be the one that makes that hormone and helps you sleep. So people who have lost their sight and can't coordinate their natural wake sleep cycles, using natural light can stabilize their sleep patterns by taking them out of some melatonin. I know you can buy melatonin over the counter. Some people use melatonin. I have used it occasionally and have had good results. Some people say that they take it and it gives them nightmares or bad dreams. So getting melatonin naturally is probably your best bet. But if your pineal gland is not making the melatonin like it should, then you might want to check with your doctor to see if they would recommend some melatonin. And then the basal forebrain, that's near the front and the bottom of the brain. It also promotes sleep and wakefulness, while part of the midbrain acts as the arousal system. So obviously throughout this whole system, the brain, there's things taking place constantly that are waking us up, keeping us awake, getting us ready for sleep, producing hormones that will help us sleep, all when we're not even aware of what's going on. And then the amygdala, it's the almond-shaped structure. It's involved in processing emotions and becomes increasingly active during REM sleep. So REM sleep is the time when your brain is very, very active. There's images, there's dreams, there's repairs going on, and that's processing of things as well. So if you're not getting much good REM sleep, then you can wake up tired and then feel like you still need more sleep, even though you might have been in the bed with your eyes closed for 8 hours. So there's sleep and wake regulation. So circadian rhythms, that's like the body's biological clock. So for me, my body starts to get tired around 9 o'clock at night. I don't even say to myself, wow, it's 9 o'clock, you got to go to bed. My body's circadian rhythm just says 9 o'clock, time to go to bed. And then about 5 o'clock, my body just wakes up. I don't have to settle an alarm. That's what happens. So circadian rhythms direct a variety of functions, from the fluctuations in the wakefulness to body temperature to metabolism and the release of hormones. So they control the timing of your sleep and cause you to be sleepy at night and then the wake in the morning. So For most of us, if we pay attention, we've got a pretty solid circadian rhythm. And if we sleep according to our circadian rhythm, we probably don't need to use an alarm clock. But if we're forcing ourselves to sleep out of our natural body's tendency towards a circadian rhythm, then we might need to use an alarm clock because we're trying to wake up sooner than our brain and body are wanting to wake up. And then sleep-wake homeostasis. It reminds our body when it is time to sleep, and then it regulates the sleep intensity. So things that can influence your sleep-wake homeostasis could be a medical condition, could be medication you're taking, could be your sleep environment. It could be if you're taking drugs or alcohol, that's going to impact it. Anything that's going to impact how your brain is functioning, that's gonna impact your sleep wake homeostasis. And then if you've got a lot of stress on your plate or things bothering you, that also can impact that. So the sleep wake homeostasis reminds the body to sleep. It's like, okay, time to go to sleep. We're getting tired. We're gonna slow ourselves down. We're gonna feel like we have less energy, all of that process. And then it regulates the sleep intensity as well. So it can get you, the sleep drive gets even stronger every hour that you stay awake after you should be going to sleep. So it regulates that sleep intensity. And if I've stayed up, personally, I know for me, if I'd stayed up 2 hours later than my regular biological clock, my circadian rhythm wants me to, then that sleep intensity is really pushing. Say, come on now. I can barely keep my eyes open. My brain is getting foggy. I'm not really fully present anymore. And that's my sleep wake homeostasis, getting this sleep intensity. So I will go to bed because the brain recognizes that we don't always pay attention to what our body needs. And so it will be like the loud voice in the background saying, go to bed, go to bed, go to bed.
It's funny because our body gets used to it, right? I wake up every morning and a lot later than Carol, because Carol has a routine with the 5 in the morning. I wake up at about 10 till 7 in the morning, and then I try to go to bed at a relatively earlier, around 11 o'clock. But I notice on the weekends, I'm like, well, you know what? I'll go ahead and stay up a little bit later and sleep in. Doesn't happen though, because our body's already set that way. It's like an alarm clock, and I find myself, and I'll wake up on a Saturday morning at 10 till 7. I'm like, oh, what am I doing awake? And trying going back to sleep. And it's strange how our bodies work. It just has that internal alarm clock. Always reminds me of that Seinfeld episode with Kramer, when he was talking about he has this internal alarm clock that always wakes him up, so he doesn't need anything else. And then the one day that he had to wake somebody up for a marathon, he misses that day because the alarm clock didn't go off. So.
Yep, exactly.
So we're going to be talking more about stages of sleep, and we're going to break them down a little bit further. So we'll talk about the stage 1, the initial non-rapid eye movement, and it's not the REM sleep, of course. We'll talk more about that, the non-REM sleep, but the initial non-rapid eye movement. And then second, we'll talk about the secondary non-rapid eye movement, and what does that look like, and when does that take place, and what does that look like in that stage? And then number 3, we'll look at the non-rapid eye movement and slow wave sleep, okay? And what does that look like in that stage as well? And we'll get into more details with this. And then 4th, we'll talk about rapid eye movement sleep. And is that our REM sleep? And how deep are we? And do we almost go into paralysis, it seems like, right? That it's difficult for us to move, and we're having those dreams and we can't interact and almost feel paralyzed. So we'll talk a little bit about that during these different stages and how they affect our sleep.
So the first stage is the dozing off stage, and I'm sure that we're all familiar with this. You get ready for bed, you brush your teeth, you put your pajamas on, you crawl into bed, you think, okay, it's time for me to go to sleep. Your body is not fully relaxed. It's still in the getting through the day, processing what's happened to you. So you lay there, you're trying to get comfortable. Maybe if you're not an instant sleeper, you're rolling around, fluffing up the pillow, maybe opening a window or closing a window, adjusting your blankets. So you're trying to get into that place where your brain can be ready to relax. though the body and the brain start to slow down at that point. So your brain activity is slowing down. It's not as active as it could be when you are trying to do some interacting with others or focusing on something. And then sleep is not deep at this stage. And this stage, in the very, very beginnings of sleep, it's about 1 to 5 minutes. So it's the changeover from wakefulness to sleep. During this time of relatively light sleep, your heartbeat, breathing, and eye movement slow, and your muscles relax, and sometimes you twitch. And so sometimes, at least for me, when I'm just getting into that phase and then I twitch, it'll wake me back up, and then I have to go through this stage again. So your brain waves begin to slow down from their daytime wakefulness. So this is just the first 1 to 5 minutes. It's a very quick process that happens. And again, you can go back through this cycle 2 or 3 times if you start twitching, or if something startles you or gets you, wakes you up, because the sleep is very, very light at this point.
So when we talk about stage 2, during stage 2, the body enters more of a subdued state, including a drop in temperature. Your muscles are relaxed, your breathing is slowing down, and your heart rate's slowing down. At the same time, your brain waves are showing a new pattern, and the eye movement stops altogether. On a whole, the brain just brain activity just slows down. And there's short bursts of activity that actually help resist being woken up during this time that you're getting that internal stimuli. Now, something we look at stage 2 sleep, it can last up from 10 to 60 minutes during the first sleep cycle. And during stage 2, it becomes longer during the night. Collectively, a person can typically spend at least half of their sleep in stage 2 sleep. And I personally, I find myself with that a lot. I notice as you get older, you have more frequent trips to the restroom, at least for me. So I find myself here quite a bit. Something to think about during stage 2 is that it's a non-REM sleep, right? It's not that deep sleep. Is a period of light sleep before you're entering your deeper sleep. And I always think about that as like sometimes when you wake up in the middle at 4 in the morning, you go, oh, I've got at least another couple hours to sleep in. Well, that's part of that, right? Your heart, again, your heart's heartbeat, the breathing is slower, you're relaxed, and so on. And the brain is just taking things slow.
So stage 3 is when we finally get to deep sleep. So we did our tossing, turning, settling in during the light sleep, maybe fidgeting a little bit. And then we went to the next stage where we're getting more relaxed. Our brain body is slowing down. Everything's getting ready to transition to deep sleep. So it's stage 3 is called deep sleep. And it's harder to wake someone up. And when people are in deep sleep, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, where we're in deep sleep and somebody wakes us up and we're very disoriented and we're not sure, we might have been in the middle of a dream. And so we get awakened and we're half dream and half awake and we're not sure what's happening and where we are, and we have to orient ourselves. Well, that can happen during deep sleep. So the muscle tone, the pulse, the breathing, everything slows down. And this is when we're getting the restoration that we need to process everything that's happened during the day, to put things in order. Our brain takes this time to what I call do its filing. So the things we saw, the things that impacted us, that's when the brain is going to put all of that information in the correct file cabinet. So then the next day we can start fresh. The brain activity during this time has an identifiable pattern known as delta waves. So stage 3 can also be considered also known as delta sleep or shortwave sleep, because the waves in our brain are have a very identifiable pattern. So experts think that this stage is critical to restorative. When we're in deep sleep, this is where our restoration happens. Our body recovers during this time, and it can impact growth. So if you've got children, you might notice that when they're having a growth spurt, that they actually sleep more during that time. So that because their body is growing and changing, and it needs that time so it can physically grow and the brain can grow as well. It can also boost our immune system. So I know for me, if I'm not getting enough sleep, one of the things that happens is I notice that I'm more likely to get a cold. So for me, stage 3 sleep is very important to make sure that my immune system is up and I can stay healthy. Even though brain activity is reduced, there's evidence that deep sleep contributes to insightful thinking. So have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with some fabulous idea? You had a problem that you were mulling over all day or for a couple days, and then all of a sudden you get this fabulous idea in the middle of the night, and then you wake up and then hopefully you wrote it down because otherwise it might be gone. That's because your brain is still working during deep sleep. So we spend the most time in deep sleep during the first half of the night. So during the early stages, the stage 3 commonly lasts for 20 to 40 minutes. As you continue sleeping, these stages get shorter and more time gets spent in REM sleep. So this is the time where your heartbeat and breathing are at their lowest at all during the sleep. And your muscles are relaxed, and you may find it difficult to awaken yourself or be awakened. So this is not the time that you want your alarm to go off. And if you're the kind of person who is not able to sleep according to their circadian rhythm, and you're getting awakened during this deep sleep stage, that might be why A, you have a hard time waking up, and B, where you don't feel rested, because you need to get through the stage 3 and get to the other side for your body to feel like, okay, I've got this. I'm starting to be prepared for wake for my next day, and I'm ready to go.
So stage 4, and it's and it's funny because I was literally discussing stage 4 with my 20-year-old daughter last night, because she was telling me how she loves to have her REM sleep because that's when she dreams the best. And so we're talking about that. And during REM sleep, brain activity does pick up in levels seen when you're awake, which is really unusual, right? Because you're asleep. And at the same time, the body experiences atonia, which is a temporary paralysis of the muscles. And with those two expectations, right, the eyes and the muscles that control the breathing, even though the eyes are closed, they can be seen moving quickly, which is how the stage gets its name. So this is that rapid eye movement, right? We hear about that with REM sleep. So REM sleep is believed to be an essential cognitive function, like a memory, learning, being creative. REM sleep is known for the most vivid dreams. And again, I was discussing with my 20-year-old because she says she loves REM sleep because she has the greatest dreams. Of course, she's ready to go back to school. So I think that's part of those dreams, which explained by the significant uptick in your brain activity during that time. And dreams can occur in any sleep stage, but they're less common and intense during the NREM periods. So something to think about is, under normal circumstances, you don't enter a REM sleep stage until you've been asleep for about 90 minutes. So we've talked about stages 1 through 3. And so you normally would not enter that stage till about 90 minutes. And as the night goes on, REM stages get longer, especially the second half of the night. And while the first REM stage, maybe it lasts only a few minutes, later stages can last for around an hour. So the total REM stages may be up to about 25% of your sleep for adults. So, but those are those great nights of sleep, right? That you remember those dreams, but then also the frustration if it's just one of those a nightmare or something, and you feel that paralysis, like you can't control anything in that particular nightmare or dream. So think about how that affects us and stuff, but it's a great way for our body to sometimes definitely heal. But again, if it's things that you're dealing with throughout the day, some of your, and you've had a very stressful day, it may turn in during REM sleep, it may turn into a dream that you may start thinking about and bringing things up. And again, depending where you're at, it could become something as where it makes you feel, you could be uncomfortable, but REM sleep is very unusual. Again, being stage 4 and getting there, it's definitely a different area when we sleep.
And Anthony, when I think about REM sleep and the temporary paralysis, I always think when I heard about this first, it made so much sense to me because sometimes when I'm dreaming and I
Yes.
want to run somewhere, I want to run away, or I want to reach out for somebody, or I want to do something physical and I can't do it in my dream. Well, when my body is paralyzed in actual real, it's got the temporary paralysis. Now it makes sense to me why in my dream I can't run or chase or do what I want, because my body is actually feeling temporary paralysis. So now it's like, okay, now this all makes sense to me why in my dream I couldn't run away or I couldn't do something else. And if all my muscles are stopped except my breathing and my eyes, then that leads to the frustration of, trying to run away and you can't, or trying to grab something and you can't.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of that frustration that's in my dreams is probably related to the paralysis that won't let me move.
Hey, you know what I noticed we're talking about this at home, and one of the times I think my 20-year-old's she's really intrigued with dreaming and sleep and stuff, and she was telling me the time she got most of her REM sleep was during the pandemic, during COVID, and we were all locked down, and she would sleep a lot, because it was her way of dreaming and being. And she said, I got some amazing REM sleep, Dad, because I'd have these great dreams of us, the pandemic being over, and I could be out and going back to school and doing some amazing things. But she said some get really scary, you're right, where she felt like she couldn't do anything in some of them.
So the impacts of the stages of sleep on us. So as we age, that's going to impact our sleep. So time in each stage dramatically changes over a lifetime. Newborns spend more than 50% of their time sleeping in REM sleep and can enter REM sleep as soon as they fall asleep. So for adults, it takes this process of doing it, and for babies, and you might be able to see this, it seems like the baby just lays down and then all of a sudden their body's, it looks like they're dreaming. As they get older, their sleep becomes similar to that as adults, and then normally reaching comparable sleep by the age of 5. So on the other hand, elderly people tend to sleep less time in REM sleep. So as you age, I'm not quite sure why this is. If you're not getting in as much new information, or your brain isn't stimulated enough, or what exactly the cause of that is. But typically, as you age, your REM sleep slows down. And then sleep patterns also impacts the stages of sleep. So if a person gets irregular or insufficient sleep over a period of days, it can cause abnormal sleep cycles. So I know for me, around the holidays, when I'm staying up late and getting up earlier and going during the day, that can mess up my sleep pattern. And then after the holidays are over, I just want to sleep because I feel like I can catch up on my sleep, but you really can't do that. Alcohol is a huge thing that impacts sleep. It's going to, it reduces the REM sleep early in the night, but as the alcohol wears off, there's a REM sleep rebound with prolonged REM sleep. So it just messes up how your REM sleep works. You don't have the early REM sleep like you normally would, but you've got this rebound that prolongs the REM sleep, which could be a good or bad thing depending on the dreams you're having, I suppose. And then sleep disorders can impact, obviously, the stages of sleep. If you've got sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or other things that can cause sleep issues, obviously that's going to, if you're constantly being awakened by pain, if you're impacted because there's fireworks around your neighborhood, like was in my neighborhood for the last couple of days, all those things are going to be things that might impact my sleep and then not let me get the natural good sleep that I might otherwise get.
So we do get deprived, right? And there are a lot of contributors that deprive us from our sleep. And, I do a lot of research on sleep because obviously it's an important part of our routine, right? Because that's how our body heals and we need that, and that's important. And again, being in law enforcement, I mean, I'm sure I've lost years of sleep being on call. So some of the things some of the research that we'll be talking about, these 4 categories actually comes from Medrick, which is a publication online. And I just strongly recommend that if you're interested on sleep and some things you can do to help you sleep better, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of research that's been done, again, with Medrick, and then also the NIH, the National Institute of Health. They have a lot of great research out there. So, please do that research and you'll learn a lot more about it. But we'll talk about these 4 categories that they pointed out as the lifestyle, right? Our lifestyle. So what that looks like, because a lifestyle can be disruptive. What does that look like in your life? I mean, and a lifestyle could include work though, right? I mean, your lifestyle may be that you're on call all the time. For example, the division that I supervise now, my folks go out on all officer-involved shootings. And last night there was something that went on, and one of my investigators, he and sergeant, one of the sergeants, they have a lifestyle where they play sports and they're racquetball and they do other activities every afternoon or every night, and it's just something they do every day, with other folks. And but on top of that, they're on call, so they got a call out at it was about 1 a.m, and they text me, letting me know that they had to respond. And so then this morning, didn't get a lot of sleep. And one of them texted me and said, "Would you mind if I come in at least an hour or 2 late before we brief?" And but it's that lifestyle. Sometimes our lifestyle may get disrupted it could get disrupted with work, or it could be just things that you do every day, or things you do with your family. And what does that look like, and how is that contributing to you getting a good night's sleep? Are you doing things different? I know with me, I always think that I look forward to the summertime because I get a chance to see my daughter when she comes home from college, and my other kids that are going to school here, they don't have school. But then I think, well, there's the disruption of my sleep now because they're going to stay up late, they're going to watch movies, and our TV, where our house is set up, we have a TV room that's near my bedroom, and so I can hear all of that, right? But their lifestyle changes during the summertime, and that can definitely deprive us of our sleep. Of course, the environmental, what does that look like? Is it, and it doesn't, we can talk about the environment as far as maybe even having a cool room or a dark room. And what does that look like for you? I personally like my room to be dark and cold, and I sleep better in that. And I like to control the temperature with blankets and things like that. I don't like the temperature to control me. But the environment could also be something like, as Carol mentioned, right? With the 4th of July. I still had to come into work the next day, and we were still hearing fireworks go off at 2 a.m, on the 5th of July, early morning, right? So what does that environmental stuff look like? But environmental could also be a number of things in our environment. What does that look like? What are you exposed to? Just different environmental factors. Physio-social, why am I having problems with that word today? How is that affecting us? What are we thinking about? What other disruptions do we have in our lives throughout the day? And then, of course, your sleeping disorders. I know for the longest time I had a sleeping disorder, and I was taking melatonin, and that helped me sleep. And I was fortunate it didn't cause any nightmares or any other side effects to it, and it actually worked great for me. Before that, I was even doing, I had a doctor tell me, "Oh, you can take Benadryl, and that helps you sleep, but it makes you, but then again, you're tired the next day." But what does that look like, right? So what kind of sleeping disorders that are depriving you of your sleep? Is it, are you worrying too much about something before you go to sleep at night? We talk about that is if you have a sleeping disorder that you worry and then you fall asleep and you go into one of the stages 1 or 2, and then you're asleep for 30 minutes, and then you wake up and go, oh my gosh, I've got a full day tomorrow, or I should have got that other thing done today. What can you do to change that? You know, one of the things that we always recommend is that if you're being woken up in the middle of the night, you're not getting a good night's sleep, write it down. You know, that helps me. You know, I have and I know it's strange sometimes, but I still use a pad and paper, right? Or a pad and a pen, and I have it next to my bed. And if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm thinking, well, oh, I should have got that done. Instead of leaving it up here in my brain so I can think about it, it'll keep me up and it'll disrupt my sleep. I'll write it down, and it does help. Because then I say, okay, I'm going to take it from here to here, and then I'll come back to it in the morning. And I won't think about it thinking, well, I'm going to have to remember to get that done. So think about what kind of things that would affect your sleep and how disruptive that can be. And again, there's a lot of great research out there. I'd strongly recommend to continue looking for things. You know, even if we don't cover it today, think about what are some of the things that I can do that help me when I get disruptions. Now, of course, the lifestyle changes, the excessive caffeine. I tend to drink a lot of caffeine. I mean, and I function the best first thing in the morning. But excessive caffeine can definitely affect us long term, and it can definitely affect us later throughout the day. And it depends when you drink it. I had seen with I had allowed my kids one night to have Cokes with hamburgers. We normally don't do that. We just have water, right? And the Cokes have caffeine, and I could definitely see how that affected them, wanting to stay up later and then end up sleeping later throughout the next day. Carol talked about drinking alcohol. Again, thinking about that, as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, one of the things that we used to do to deal with stress is doing the choir practice. But I always remember after hanging out with the team and then going home, I can never go back to sleep. So it was really, it never really helped me because the choir practice helped me forget about some of that, right? Then I'd go home and try to get some sleep, and the alcohol would keep me up. And then it'd come down to it is I have to wake up the next morning, then I really got 3 or 4 hours sleep. So that just kind of intensified things and made things a little more difficult for me throughout my day, and added to that stress. Of course, drug use, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean a negative type drug, just what kind of drugs, if you're taking a drug for blood pressure, things like that. But also, of course, the negative drugs, you know, that can disrupt your lifestyle. If it's something that you're doing with friends and then you go home and you try to go to sleep, how is that affecting you, right? Shift work, we talked a little bit about that as well. What does that look like if you're on call, or if you work for a department where you spend, you know, 3 months working graveyard, then the next 3 months you go to day shift, and the next 3 months you go to swing. You know, I've talked to agencies throughout the country, and many of them have that type of schedule where they're always rotating. And so they may stay on one schedule for 3 months, and then they switch and go to a different schedule. So that type of work can certainly disrupt your sleeping schedule because, again, as we talked about at the beginning, that, you know, if your body gets used to waking up and going to sleep at a certain time, and now you're changing that. So again, that could be a lifestyle disruption. Jet lag, it's something that I think we all experience. I know with Carol and I, prior to the pandemic, we were traveling quite a bit. And I always remember that there was a trip that we actually went to, I think we were going to Canada, and we got stuck in Washington at the last minute. And we actually had stayed in Washington before we went up to Canada, Washington, D.C. And so we got like 3 or 4 hours sleep. Well, really didn't get 3 hours, 4 hours sleep. We got back to our hotel rooms, and we checked in, and then had that jet lag from flying from Albuquerque to DC, and then trying to calm down. And then I remember I said, like, okay, got to force myself to go to sleep because I got to get up early, and then we have to fly to Canada still. When we arrive, we're going to have to do an all-day presentation, and then we'll debrief, have dinner together, and then start over again, and then get some sleep and start over again. And I'm going to be exhausted. and you almost put that stress on yourself, right? And we've all been there. But so that, and I remember the jet lag, and that's happened to me many, many times where that you're thinking about that. I'm fortunate that, we have very supportive boss here with Innocent Justice, and we won't train that until the next day. So it gives us time to get past that jet lag. But occasionally it does happen to all of us, right? And then attending the university and stuff, that can also cause that, just the disruption and being in a new environment. I know with my daughter leaving her comforter for a room and going into her new apartment in another state and going to school there now, she's going to have problems sleeping starting out. So that's another thing we were talking about. How is she going to handle that? So again, lifestyle disruptions.
And then, some things that I always recommend to people when they're trying to get better sleep is quiet, a room, no light, and a cool temperature, because excessive noise, if any of you experienced what I did, and what Anthony did over this past several days when there was fireworks and gunshots and sometimes you couldn't tell which was which, that makes it harder to sleep. And particularly if you have dogs that don't like the noise like I do. I've got dogs that are really alert, and I'm trying to get some sleep and the dogs are barking, and all that stuff just makes it all worse. Bright light is not good, because there's a part of your brain, even if your eyes are closed, there's a part of your brain that still senses, in your eyeballs, it still senses the light. And when it senses the light, it begins to wonder if it's time to wake up. So if there's any type of light at all, it sends signals through your eyes to your brain that maybe it's time to wake up. So you don't want that when you're trying to sleep. And then a warm temperature. As the temperature is warmer, it's harder for us to settle in and go to sleep. And so keeping the room at a temperature that's actually a little bit cooler than you might think would be good is probably a good idea, because then you can cover up with the blankets and you'll be more comfortable, as opposed to if the room is just perfect with no blankets on and then you put some blankets on, then you're not going to be able to sleep well. So making sure that you can have it as quiet as possible. So no, if possible, no outside noise. Or kids in other rooms making noise or any of that, no bright lights. So make sure your TV's turned off. I used to have a night light on in my room, just so that if I had to get up in the middle of the night, I wouldn't have to turn an actual light on. But then I realized that even having that night light on would be impacting the light coming to my eyeballs and into my brain. So I turned that off. And then the warm temperature, again, you want to keep that as cool as possible. And I think one of the reasons that I personally have a harder time sleeping when it's a full moon is because of the bright light. So I've got a couple windows in my room where I cannot cover them. They don't have shades or drapes or something, because they're very high and small. But on the night of a full moon, that bright light shining in really impacts my sleep. Now, I know there's lots of myths and stories around the moon, but I just know the light from the moon is one of the things that really impacts me and makes it harder for me to sleep. And then psychosocial disruptors. So obviously, if you're having any of these things, and I'm sure we can all relate to times when we've experienced this: anxiety, worry, rumination. So if you're worried or anxious about anything, that's going to come out when you're trying to go to sleep. Oftentimes, if we've got concerns about things, we don't think about them during the daytime because we're so focused on getting through the day and taking care of the things that we need to and interacting with people and getting our work done, that once we slow down and we go to bed, that's the time that the anxiety and the worry and the rumination begins, and it makes it harder for us to stay asleep. And it disrupts the ability for us to go to sleep as well. And then if you're a parent of a young child, or sometimes even an older child, that can impact, that's a psychosocial disruptor. I know when my son was living at home, even when he was in college, that was a huge psychosocial disruptor, because he would come in at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning and had no concept of what quiet meant, and would then make all sorts of noise. And then I'm awake because I'm hearing him come in the door. So if you're parents of a younger child, you might have to get up and you might have to interact with them and you might have to take care of them. And if you're a parent of an older child, You just might have to hear their noise. And then if you're the caregiver of the family, I know there was a while there when I was growing up where my grandmother lived with us and she was not getting much sleep because she was in a lot of pain. So she would call out during the middle of the night and that would wake us up and it would wake the whole family up. And so our sleep was disrupted. So if you've got that experience where you're someone that is caretaking for another family member and that family member needs care throughout the night, that's definitely going to impact your ability to get a good night's sleep, and it's going to impact it not in a good way.
And thank you for the feedback we're seeing in the chats. Very detailed information. Thank you. I was reading some of your research there, and we will definitely include this in our presentations as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about some sleep disruptors, and Carol will cover some things dealing with medical conditions. But some of the sleep disruptors that we usually come to mind, and it's a common word that we are all very familiar with, is insomnia, right? Which is a sleep disorder, which you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. I mean, we've all been there, and of course that can be caused from what has gone on throughout your day. I mean, what stress, and again, there's no stigma to asking for help or figuring out what is causing that insomnia. Why am I staying awake all night, or why can't I fall asleep? I mean, we've done this all over the country, talking about wellness and how to take care of yourself better. And one of the things that we hear about from everyone is one of the questions we ask is, which is the most difficult night for anyone to fall asleep, or they always have insomnia? It's usually a Sunday night, right? The insomnia can be a condition that can be short-term, acute. It can last long-term. It can be chronic, and that's when you definitely want to seek out help. It may come and go, and I personally been there where it come and go. Some weeks I have amazing sleep, and it just depends what's going on. Acute insomnia lasts for one night, again, maybe for a few weeks. But a chronic one can last even up to 3 nights or even up to 3 weeks. So what is causing that, the insomnia? So think about that and what you can do different to change the way you sleep. The obstructive sleep apnea, that's when the muscles in the back of your throat relax too much, and they allow they relax too much to allow normal breathing, basically. These muscle support structures, including the back of the roof of your mouth, the soft platelet, the triangular piece of the tissue hanging from the soft platelet on your tonsils and the tongue. And that can cause a sleep apnea issues. That you may, again, Carol's going to discuss medical, but it's something that if you're experiencing that, it's definitely something you may want to talk to your physician about. The Restless Leg Syndrome, RLS, is a condition that causes uncontrollable urge to move the legs. Usually becomes an uncomfortable sensation. I personally have experienced that myself. It typically happens in the evenings or nighttime hours. When you're sitting or laying down. Moving eases unpleasant feeling of it's temporary. Again, some of these things that we'll be covering, if more long term, it's going past, and you see it's happening more frequent, you want to definitely talk to your physician about that. Narcolepsy definitely is a chronic sleep disorder. Characterized by overwhelming daytime drowsiness, sudden attacks of sleep. People that have narcolepsy usually often find it difficult to stay awake for long periods of time, regardless of the circumstances. And then narcolepsy can cause serious disruption of your daily routine. I was thinking about that. My father has that. I took him for Father's Day to see Top Gun, and if you haven't seen Top Gun, it's a lot of action, right? And I said, "Daddy, you going to be okay going to see a movie with I know you get tired and you fall asleep." And he goes, "Oh no, I won't fall asleep during Top Gun. I've heard a lot of good things about it." and he was asleep the first 10 minutes of the movie. And it's something that he experienced. Cardiac, I can't say it's Circadian Rhythm Disorder, also known as sleep-awake disorders, are also problems that occur in your body. Your body's internal clock. I guess that's the best way to put it, which tells you when time to sleep and stay awake, and it's completely out of sync. And again, we can see that happen out of sync with your environment. So again, that can happen with a number of things that we've talked about so far. You know, I again, with that staying awake, staying out late, you know, the fireworks, all those kind of things and stuff, and your body's used to waking up and going to sleep at a certain time. So what does that look like in your life?
So, as we can well guess, medical conditions can also impact the quality of the sleep that you're getting. If you're in pain, that's going to impact your ability to relax and calm down and get some good sleep. If you're tossing and you're turning and you just can't get comfortable, then it's harder for you to get into that deep sleep cycle, and you might end up spending more time in a lower level sleep cycle. Restrictive lung disease can cause issues when you're sleeping, because if you're not able to get the oxygen, or if you're not able to breathe in a way that is useful, that's going to impact your ability to sleep. I know my mom and dad both had asthma, and that would impact their sleep as well. When they were having their lungs were feeling really tight, it was harder for them to relax, it was harder for them to sleep. And I know my mom at times would talk about how it was harder for her to go to sleep because she was afraid that she might not be able to breathe. So you know, if you have some sort of restrictive lung disease, anything that's going to impact your ability to breathe well, that's going to impact your sleep. And then chronic kidney disease also will. So if you're having issues with your kidney, diabetes, if you're having issues where your kidneys are not functioning correctly, or you're having to get up too many times during the night to urinate. So I know with diabetes, that can be one of the concerns, is that you have to get up in the middle of the night. That's definitely going to be a sleep disruptor. Psychiatric disorders, I work with quite a few people that have psychiatric disorders, and it does impact sleep. If someone has, if someone has a bipolar disorder and they're in a manic phase, that can impact their sleep, where they don't sleep for long periods of time, sometimes a couple days. If you have a psychosis disorder like schizophrenia, that can impact your sleep. If you're very fixated on something, or if the voices that you're hearing, the hallucinations that you're hearing, are impacting your ability to sleep, again, that's going to be impacting how your quality of sleep goes. And then medications can also impact that. If you're taking medications that like prednisone sometimes makes your body more it's a stimulant, so it keeps your body more awake, so it's harder to rest. If you're taking any kind of a medication that's a stimulant, it might decrease your ability to have a good night's sleep. If you're taking other medications that impact your sleep, definitely you're going to notice that as well. So if you're starting a new medication, absolutely one of the first things that you need to do is check in with your pharmacist or the doctor who's prescribing the medication and ask, how does this impact my sleep? What do I need to be prepared for? And what are the things that you suggest I do to counterbalance the effects of this medication? Because, you know, sometimes you need the medication, but then the downside is that it impacts your sleep, and then we cannot go long periods of time without good sleep. Otherwise, it's going to impact, it's going to have a domino effect on its impact.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Carol, because I actually, during the pandemic, or actually during the pandemic recently in January, I actually had COVID, and one of the first things they put me on is prednisone, and that just kept me awake. It was irritable. It kept me awake. It definitely affected my sleep patterns. I know the times I did fall asleep, I ended up having nightmares. It really changed the way things, my sleep in general. And it's something that you definitely want to consider. Again, as Carol mentioned, medications, if you have a new medication, and it's a great advice, is asking your pharmacist. Your doctor doesn't always pick that up. I found with some of the medications I was put on, and then talking to the pharmacist immediately said, yes, these two medications will interact. I was taking something for my asthma, because again, with asthma and COVID, it affected all that. And then with prednisone, I felt wired and just keep me up. So definitely affected everything that I was doing. And again, as we've talked about, is that your body needs sleep to heal. I mean, that's the time your body's take advantage of healing and as you're sleeping and settling down, and gives you that opportunity. So it's definitely counterintuitive there. Consequences of sleep deprivation, definitely increased stress. I mean, we've all been there, right? You're getting enough sleep and now you're stressed. And again, I heard that this morning with one of my sergeants. I could hear it in the sound of the tone of his voice, that the stress is piling on because, and I know a lot of it is because he didn't get enough sleep. A reduced quality of life, right? So how is that affecting you? I mean, are you too tired to do anything? You just want to, you want to just sit on the couch or try to lay down, and are you able to get on and do anything because you're not getting enough sleep at night? So it's definitely affecting everyday life. Or is it, personally, with myself, I know if I didn't get enough sleep by at least 11:30, I'm getting 11:30 in the morning, I'm actually getting very tired and I can feel it coming on. And then I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to make the rest of the day? And again, that increases the stress. The emotional distress, what is that? How is that affecting you? Are you lashing out at others? How is it affecting you emotionally? Are things starting to get to you? And that all falls under mood disorders as well. I mean, how is that affecting your mood? Are you taking it out on everyone around you? Again, you're not getting enough sleep and you start getting very moody, and you see that. I have seen that with my kids firsthand, and I've told them, you need to get more sleep, you need to do this. And because I can see that change in moods. The cognition and memory issues, are you forgetting things? I mean, we've all been there, right? We talk about how if you're under a lot of stress, and how that can overtake us sometimes, and then we start forgetting things, and our cognitive abilities are affected, our memory issues. And I've personally seen that. I've come walking out of our grocery store. Most recently, I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning that my 80-year-old mother has COVID, and of course I was worried about her. So it's something that kind of kept me up this weekend thinking about that, worrying about her illness. And so I noticed I ran to Walmart to get her some soup and some things, and I came back out and I hadn't had a lot of sleep, and I lost the car. And it was something as simple as that, and it's just something I'm like, I can't find and I'm like, it's not. And normally that would not be an issue with me, but it was because of being deprived of sleep that affected me. And then of course your performance issues. What does that look like? It's what, how are you performing at work? Your daily activities at work. How are you performing as a parent or as a boyfriend, girlfriend? In your relationship, how are you interacting with others? When I say just talking to people, and how are you performing among other people? Do they notice that? Is that they notice that something's going on, that something is definitely affecting you? And it may be because you're deprived of sleep.
So some consequences that might occur if you are experiencing sleep deprivation. There might be, it might increase your blood pressure. Hypertension is common if you're not getting enough sleep. Weight-related issues, there's research that shows that if you are not getting the sleep you need, then there's a greater likelihood that you can have weight-related issues. That's why one of the reasons that people would be encouraged to look at sleep apnea and do a sleep study is if they're having issues related to weight that they didn't have in the past. So there's There's research that shows that getting a sleep study done can really help eke out what might be your sleep issue. Higher BMI, obviously, if your weight is higher, then there's a greater likelihood you'll have a higher BMI. Higher cholesterol, increased rates of cancer. So all of these things can happen consequently from sleep deprivation, as you're not able to have the restorative effects of sleep on your body. So it's another reason why you want to do what you can to make sure that you can get the sleep that you need and not have to worry about sleep deprivation. So what we're talking about here doesn't mean like you miss one night of sleep. We're talking about long-term sleep deprivation. So if it's long periods of time where you're not getting sleep deprivation because, whatever the case might be, you're working long hours, you're trying to work long hours and raise a child, whatever the circumstance might be, that could cause sleep deprivation long term. That can be the consequences of that.
So it's definitely benefits of quality of sleep, boosting your immune system. So boosting your immune system. Of course, we can do that with other things, with prebiotics, probiotics, vitamins, eating right, less sugar in your diet. But sleep's going to help considerably with that, right? It's going to help boost your immune system. It's going to maybe help you with not getting a cold or anything that's out there. There's hundreds of viruses or thousands of viruses that are around us every day, and not just COVID, right? So boosting your immune system to fight those off and be healthy. Does definitely prevents weight gain. Again, your body's taking time to heal, and just getting that 7, and it doesn't have to be 8 hours sleep. 7 hours of sleep is great. If you can get 7 hours, it's wonderful. And that helps your body from healing, and it helps your body, your metabolism work better, and increases your metabolism, and your body during sleep time can actually burn away some of that fat. And have you ever noticed, though, like when you're sleep deprived, you really want those sugary things, right? The candy bar and the drinks and things. And I find myself doing that sometimes, right? And what does that do? That causes us to gain weight. And it's something that, so good quality sleep can actually help with that, right? And prevent us from gaining weight. It strengthens your heart. Definitely helps your body and all together, but it's strengthening your heart. Doesn't put a lot of stress on your heart. Again, when you're awake, your heart's working pretty hard to pump blood throughout your body and just keep your machine going. But when you're asleep at night and you're resting, your heart's able to rest, slow down, and able to take that time that it needs. So when you're awake, it can produce it, and it can work the best it knows how. Increasing productivity, and again, working hard and getting the right sleep actually helps you increase your productivity, makes your day definitely more productive. And I can see that firsthand in my new position that I'm working now. I may be be on a case for 9 hours reviewing a shooting or something, and making some decisions on it. And but I try to make it safe, where I cut off at a good time, get that sleep. And again, thinking about it, I can cut off at a good time, write down what I'm leaving off. So I'm not thinking about it thinking about it trying to fall asleep, and then coming back to it the next morning. And that makes me more productive. So think about how you can make yourself more productive with getting the right amount of sleep. Definitely improving your memory, the cognitive memory loss that you experience. And I gave you an example of what happened to me this weekend. Getting the right amount of sleep definitely improves your memory and helps with that. Again, your body's building itself, it's working, it's healing, and when you're sleeping, it gets that time to do that because you're not out moving around. And then it definitely increases your exercise performance if you love doing that. You want to go to the gym or go for a walk or run. You're not exhausted. I try to force myself. I get a good night's sleep, and then every day at 3 o'clock, I'll go downstairs and work out we have a gym in our building, And I've noticed a big difference. The nights that I don't get a good night's sleep and I decide to stay up late and work on a case, that next day, the whole day suffers. I'm not going to make it to the gym at 3 o'clock. So think about how you want to make that happen, what's going to be best for you and your body, and what's going to help you build your immune system.
So the environmental factors, our sleep hygiene can also be impacted by the environmental factors. So try to see what environmental factors you can do that will help that. So are there things in your room? Can you have your room darker or cooler? Or are there other behaviors that you can do? You don't want to do things that are going to stimulate your brain before you're wanting to go to bed. So you want to kind of slow down, think about, I want to try to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. And so in order to do that, I need to be prepared, and I need to not look at my computer screen, not look at my television, not be really engaged in something intense before I go to sleep. So my brain begins to slow down and knows to expect that I'm going to be going to sleep. So that's some environmental factors. And the behaviors that you can control. The environmental factors, again, if I can't go out into my neighborhood and tell people not to shoot the fireworks. Consistency, doing things again and again can help you get better sleep. So if you're going to bed the same time every night and you're getting up the same time every morning, that's going to help with that consistency. Your brain's going to be more prepared for this. And then create a plan to help when you have trouble. So what are you going to do when you have a hard time sleeping? For me, my plan, I have several layer plan. Part of what I do when I'm having a hard time sleeping is I will put on some white noise kind of music. I'll listen to some rainfall. I'll listen to some ocean sounds. I'll listen to the forest sounds. I do have some music that has different wavelength sounds through it to help me go to sleep. Sometimes if sleep isn't coming very quickly to me, then what I will do is I will put on a story time that's an adult story time that's very, very boring, and it makes me go to sleep right away. And I listen to that, and pretty soon I'm dreaming and not thinking about all of the things that were keeping me awake. And that's one of my plans. Another plan is that I don't want to stay in bed for long periods of time if I can't go to sleep. And part of my plan also is to have a glass of water by my bedside, so in case I wake up thirsty, and other things that I can do to help induce my sleep and keep me sleeping. And then it's about putting yourself in the best position for good sleep. So if that means that the good sleep that we want to get is going, if we need to do things like open a window, or if we need to do things that are going to be important, like telling our children, if you're gonna not come home till 2 o'clock, don't come home till the next day. Or maybe you and your partner trade off on child care during the middle of the night, and one of you wears earplugs so that they don't have to hear the noise. Whatever it takes, because putting yourself in the best position for good sleep is going to be the thing that's going to help you most the following day. So how much sleep do you really need? There really is no average number. There's not, that's not like there's some cookie cutter amount. Then it's, babies need 16 to 18 hours of sleep typically. School age children about 9.5, adults 7 to 9. I feel better when I get more sleep. That's what works for me. It's been that way all the time. I don't know why. Maybe just because I really love being in my bed and dreaming and enjoying that quiet time. But if I'm going to get some sleep, I'd rather get on the 9-hour sleep. Typically 60 years old or older, they're getting fewer hours of sleep. So if that's what they need, you don't want to you don't want to have to force yourself to get up. It's like, oh my gosh, it's been 9 hours, I need to get up. If you're noticing that you're sleeping consistently much, much longer than that, so if you, as an adult, you feel like you need 11, 12 hours of sleep, you might want to check in with your doctor to make sure that everything is okay. Not that there's a problem with having 11 hours of sleep if your doctor doesn't find any other issues, but just checking in if there's been a change in your sleep patterns or your sleep habits, checking in to see, is there anything significant physically, emotionally, mentally that's caused this change in my sleep pattern, whether it's a great deal more sleep or a great deal less sleep that you're needing. And so, we're talking about dreaming now. Everyone dreams. Average dream time is 2 hours per night. It doesn't seem to me that that I'm getting 2 hours of dreaming in a night. Sometimes it doesn't feel like I'm doing any kind of dreaming, and then sometimes it feels like it's dreaming, the whole entire night. But the average dreaming time is about 2 hours. That's the time that our brain is just kind of processing things. The exact purpose of dreaming is not really known. But it can help you possibly process emotions. So it's, events from the day that you're thinking about, other things like that, that can be part of your processing that happens. And as a consequence, you dream. So if you notice that sometimes there's bits and pieces of your day that gets incorporated into your dream, and sometimes they get incorporated in a very funny way, or sometimes in a very scary way. And sometimes when you dream, it can be that it feels so real that the next day you wake up. I had a friend that would have very, very vivid dreams. And if she had a dream where she got mad at her husband, she would actually wake up that next day and kind of be mad at him until she really processed, oh yeah, that was just my dream. So you wake up and you're thinking, wow, that person really did me wrong and I'm mad at them. But then you realize it was a dream. And sometimes it feels so real that it's hard to put aside the fact that it was just an imaginary thing. It wasn't your real, wasn't real life. And then dreams can be in black and white or color. They're not necessarily in either black and white or color, whichever, it can be both. So it could be sometimes you dream in color, sometimes you dream in black and white. But it doesn't, there's not really much of a rhyme or reason to that either.
All right, so tips for a better night's sleep. Definitely pay attention to what you eat and drink. We talked about alcohol. We've talked about caffeine. I touched on sugar. Definitely it's something that we want to be aware of what we're eating and drinking, and what's going to maybe cause you to wake up. If I've noticed personally, as I get older, I definitely can't eat later at night. Like if I have a snack like at 10:30 and then my goal is to be asleep by 11, it's not going to happen, regardless of the snack is, because it's going to cause a disruption for me. And if I fall asleep within about an hour of being asleep, I'm going to have to get up and go to the restroom. It's something that it's happened to me now that I've noticed that the older I get, I may need less sleep, but I do notice that I got to be careful in what I eat and drink before I go to sleep. So think about that. We're going to have times where we go to a dinner party or go somewhere, hang out with friends, and we may eat or drink late. But think about how that does affect you. Definitely create a restful environment. By creating a restful environment, create a room that's ideal for your sleeping. As Carol mentioned, the cool, dark, quiet rooms. I went ahead and I mentioned at the beginning that I went and got a new mattress. I ended up going with like a foam mattress because I stayed at a hotel and they had and I'm not promoting any particular mattress, but they had like a Tempur-Pedic. I ended up buying a Ghost mattress, and that's what I use, and I get an amazing sleep instead of a spring mattress. That's what works best for me, the cool, dark rooms. And then, having any kind of light emitting in the room, or even having a screen. Many of us will end up reading from our phone. I have a couple apps that I love reading books on. However, that can disrupt your sleep. So think about what you can do different that may, help you sleep better. Sometimes just reading an old-fashioned book with a little light that you can clip to the book, if you can find that still. I did find one recently. It does help, and it does get you tired because you're reading the words off the page, and that light isn't enough to keep, at least it wasn't enough to keep me awake. So think about things you can do for that. Include daily physical activities. What are you doing during the daytime? Regular physical activity. As I mentioned earlier, I try to go to the gym between 3 and 4. The reason I do that, because when I get off at 4, I can go home and, make dinner for the kids and, get ready for the night. And then when they need me, I'm available to them. And then after I'm done doing things with the family, then I can go to sleep, and it just makes things easier. That schedule works best for me. But of course, it may be disrupted once in a while with other things that come in play. But think about what your daily physical activities look like, what your routine looks like, and what you can do to be able to better accommodate sleep. And then manage your worries, right? Try to resolve your worries or concerns before bedtime. I gave you some ideas about writing them down on a pad of paper. So think about how you can do that. Set them aside for tomorrow. Instead of thinking, if you're thinking about, okay, this is what I got to do tomorrow. Tomorrow's a big day for me. Tomorrow I got to visit a client. Tomorrow I've got to do a report. I got to do this. Write that down somewhere. It works. I guarantee you it works. I did that this weekend with everything that's going on in my life this weekend. I had a big case and I got to a point and I said, okay, I'm good here. I'm not thinking about it. I'm writing. I'm good. I'll come back to it tomorrow. I was able to shut my brain off and come back to it later.
So some other things you want to consider is setting a sleep schedule. Trying to go to bed at the same time, doing a nightly routine that's going to keep consistent across the board. Whether that means, an hour before bedtime, I'll do X, Y, Z. I'm going to sit and read some positive books before I go, or listen to some good music, just to help your body and brain know what's happening and to prepare for that, to get your body and brain in a ready for sleep state. And then healthy daily habits. So if you're, like we were talking about, drinking alcohol a lot or using other drugs or not, doing things for your body that's going to be too stimulating, that's probably not going to be helping your sleep. And then sleep setting, as well. So, make sure that you're doing what you can to try to get yourself that sleep, but at the same time, don't do things that are going to keep you awake. So, consider cognitive therapy. If you're struggling with sleep, there are certainly ways that you can use cognitive therapy to help understand what it is that's causing the difficulties in your sleep and the steps you can take to make things better. And that could be a matter of just understanding why there's been a change. Keep your bedroom for sleep and sex. You don't want your brain to think there's lots of different activities going on during this time when you're in your bedroom. You want your brain to know once you cross that threshold, it's for sleep and sex only, and that's it. And then don't try to sleep. Tell yourself to rest. I know for me, if I lay in bed and I say, I got to go to sleep, I got to go to sleep, I got to go to sleep, I never get to sleep. If I just say, well, I'm just going to lay here and rest and take it as it comes, I'm much more likely to be able to sleep. Because if I'm telling myself I have to sleep, the increased anxiety of that is going to cause me to not be able to get to sleep at all.
So Carol kind of touched on this, listening to white noise, natural sounds, calm music. I do the same thing. I have actually a little Alexa Echo on my bedstand. I use that for everything. Wakes me up in the morning, sets my schedule. It knows it so well now. It'll ask me, do you want to wake up at the same time tomorrow, right? So it's and even though so think about what kind of white noises you can use. I mean, there's so many things out there that you can use. One of the big things you want to do is don't watch the clock, especially if you're having problems falling asleep. Don't just stare at the clock and go, oh my gosh, I've got to be up in 4 hours. I got to be up in 6 hours. It's going to make things worse. It's going to definitely keep you up. It's something, it's hard not to do, right? Because you're wondering, how much time do I have? But don't watch the clock. Just try to fall asleep without watching the clock, and it'll definitely help, because that'll definitely make things a little more difficult for you to fall to sleep. And then use an app for sleep suggestions. There's a lot of great apps out there. I know Carol's really big with a lot of different apps. She's actually shared with a lot of different apps with me that I've been able to use. I don't use a sleeping app. She may have one that she uses. I don't, but there are a lot of great apps out there.
And I would suggest, if you want to use an app, Insight Timer has several different things that you can do for sleep. So there's a free app and there's a pay app. I would say use the free app, but it's great for all sorts of different things: adult bedtime stories, music for sleeping, skill training for sleeping. So it's a great app to try if you're struggling with sleep. And then recognize, if your decision is to try to create a better sleep program for yourself, It might be that you're going along fine for a couple weeks and then some friends come into town and you stay up really late. Or it might be that you're doing a really good job of putting all your worries aside and not focusing on that. And then there's a really intense week and you just don't succeed. Just know that setbacks will happen and it's going to be okay. Just get back on that pattern again. And the advantages that the advances that you've made will not be forever gone. Just get back on track.
I love this. I have 2 sheepdogs at home, and Carol has dogs here. So I wish I could sleep. I actually looked at my dog the other night and I looked at him and I'm like, oh, I wish I could just sleep like that. So happiness is waking up, looking at the clock and finding that you still have 2 hours left of sleep. And isn't that true? I find myself, if I get up and go to the restroom like in the middle of the night, and then I'll ask, hey, Alexa, what time is it? And she says, it is 12:30. I'm like, awesome. I've got 6 more hours to go. And it's so true. I mean, having that extra 2 hours sleep is great.
Well, thanks so much, everyone. I'm having a little technical issues right now with my camera, but we did get quite a few questions in about average sleep times, and I hope we were able to answer some of those throughout a lot of the slides. If you do have any additional comments, you can feel free to email us directly. I do want to respect everyone's time. I know Alicia has a few closing bits to add up. I want to thank our trainers and everybody for their time and participation. We did get quite a few comments. So I'm going to go ahead and pass those along to our trainers. If you have any additional questions or information, you can feel free to reach out to them directly or myself. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back along to Alicia. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Basilia, and thank you to our presenters for today. I think we all learned a lot. So we're just going to go through a few more slides to wrap up. There is a closing poll in the bottom right side of your screen. Please be sure to fill that out before you leave today. Just another reminder that you will get a certificate of attendance for coming to today's event. That is an automated email coming directly from WebEx. So please keep an eye on your email and check your spam folder if you don't see it. All right, here is OJJDP's NTAC contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about materials. My colleague just put the materials link again in the chat, but you can reach out to us if you have additional questions. Here are the links to sign up for OJJDP's listserv and JuveJust, and you can check out the events on their website. Just another note that today's event was recorded. It will be posted to OJJDP's YouTube channel as well as their multimedia page. We have some upcoming events for law enforcement and prosecutors. This first event on July 28th is open to law enforcement only. The following events after that are open to both law enforcement and prosecutors. So if you fit one of those or want to share it with anyone who does fit into those professions, please feel free to register. And here are 2 more in August and September on combating digital hate, parts 1 and 2. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to end with the Stay Connected with OJJDP slide. Here are all the links to our social media pages. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day.